The house was breathing softly, as if it didn't want to wake me. Only the old tick-tock of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator filled the kitchen. From the kettle, the first whistle of the day cut through the warm air like a sigh of rust. I, Lydia May, 68, tied a scarf around my hair and caught the smell of coffee rising like a Sunday memory, strong, sweet, and stubborn. My phone buzzed on the floral tablecloth. Updates for you, Lydia. I never asked for updates, but they come that way, without manners, without knocking, without understanding the weight some news carry. I tapped the screen and saw the picture before I read the words. A bluish light flashed in my eyes, a white cradle, tiny hands, a delicate bow on a knitted cap. In the corner, the caption, "Welcome, Aurora. Our family is finally complete." My heart cracked, one of those sounds no one hears but rearranges the furniture inside you. I read it again, as if searching for a spelling mistake to justify hope. Aurora, my granddaughter, Naomi's child, my Naomi. The sound that hurt the most wasn't a scream, it was the absence of one. The day heaven rested on my daughter's chest, my phone stayed silent. No call, no message, no, "Mom, it's happening," just a photo anyone could have seen before me. I sat down, the spoon hit the cup, and the saucer answered with a thin crack. Outside, a bus screeched to a stop, the mailman slammed the gate, a sparrow pecked the window ledge. Everything stayed the same, except me. Have you ever loved someone who tried to erase you? If you have, write "I endure" in the comments. I once thought I wouldn't survive the sound of nothing. I opened her profile. The other photos lined up like a parade of smiles. Naomi, tired but radiant. Andre, proud. The mother-in-law holding the baby like she was holding a secret. There were emojis, blessings. What a miracle. How perfect. And like a thread pulled from within, that sentence cut me again. Our family is finally complete. Me, the woman who sewed Naomi's dresses, who traded sleep for fevers, who bent her knees to pay for college, had become blank space. Family without me. I grabbed the phone. It rang, then went to voicemail. I tried again and again. Finally, I wrote, "Honey, did everything go well? I've been praying. Call me." Hours later, a reply came back, dry as burnt toast. "We'll talk later, Mom. It's been hectic." I closed my eyes and saw the first pair of booties I ever knitted, when she was just 8 weeks pregnant. I remembered the baby shower I'd planned in my notebook, the candies I'd marked with stars, the dates she said she'd still confirm. And now I understood the math. When you're pushed to the edge of the photo, the date never comes. The house knew. The floorboards creaked differently beneath my feet. The tablecloth felt rougher, and the sunlight slipped through the window as if embarrassed. I went to the sewing room. The big scissors lay where they always slept, resting on the cream fabric I'd been cutting slowly, crib sheets no one ever asked for. I touched the blade, cold, honest. It's strange how metal tells the truth without words. Either you cut or you let yourself be cut. Lord, if I still have value, show me how to endure. I didn't speak it out loud. I let the prayer run through my fingers. The kettle whistled again, insistent, irritated, as if to remind me that life doesn't wait for us to finish our sentences. I turned off the fire but couldn't drink. The coffee tasted like stale news. My body wanted to do the usual, pack a basket, choose an outfit for the baby, catch the bus, knock on the door with a cheerful, "Look who came to help." But my soul stayed seated. Some silences don't ask for presents. They ask for respect. And respect, sometimes, means accepting that the invitation never came. I, who always entered through the kitchen door, understood that now you could only enter with a password. I stood and walked to the bookshelf. On top of my worn Bible sat the old Polaroid of Naomi, 2 days old, yellow yarn hat, round cheeks, my tired but fulfilled eyes. I touched the picture gently, more gently than it even needed. The memory bit from inside. The nurse who called me the fierce little mama because I refused to leave the incubator. Her first cry, which I kept tucked in a pocket no one else can reach. How do you become a visitor in your own miracle? I asked the empty room. The phone buzzed again. Another notification. Someone sharing the post. My hand trembled, not from anger, but from grief. Grief for the voice I never heard. Grief for the smell of milk that never stained my blouse. Grief for the right to cry, tears of joy in a hospital hallway instead of tears of shock in my kitchen. I opened the window. Savannah's air came in smelling of magnolia and river fish. Down below, Mrs. Etta swept the sidewalk. She looked up, saw my face, and didn't ask a thing, just nodded, as if to say, I know how it hurts when the photo doesn't call your name. Sometimes the neighborhood is more family than family. I went back to the table and opened my blue notebook, the one where I keep bills, recipes, and promises. At the top, I wrote in a slow, childlike hand, Aurora. No wait, no time, no hospital. Only what was mine to reclaim. I exist. I endure. And beneath it, firmer than I expected from myself, my dignity is not negotiable. The phone rang. Not her. It was Sister Ruth from the church choir, confirming Thursday's rehearsal. I almost said I couldn't go, that the week was too heavy, that my chest felt bent. But something inside me pushed the answer the other way. I'll be there, sister. I need to sing today. Because when they cut you out of the picture, your voice becomes your home. And I wasn't going to sleep outside. Before turning off the phone, my finger paused over the last photo. I zoomed in on Naomi's face. There was beauty and exhaustion, but also a flicker, like she was looking past the camera, into a place no one else could see. Maybe that's where regret lives before it learns to speak. I don't know. I'm no judge. I'm a mother. And mothers don't stop loving. They just learn to love differently. By late afternoon, the light slid down the wall like fabric cut on the bias. I ran my hand across the table, brushed away invisible crumbs, aligned the cup with its saucer. There are small rituals that whisper, the world didn't end. It just changed shelves. The doorbell rang. Not Naomi, the mailman. He handed me a small, light package wrapped in cheap ribbon. I didn't remember ordering anything. I opened it with the big scissors. Inside, a pair of white knitted baby shoes, bought online, the kind that imitate affection but don't hold memories. No note, no sender. I placed the little shoes on the cream fabric I'd been sewing. They belonged there, like 2 stitches out of rhythm. I sighed. Then I heard it, not with my ears, but with that part of you that never goes deaf, a phrase woven into the wind itself. Proofs are respect for the future. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Not about holding grudges, but about holding memory. I closed the box, put the scissors away, and drank the coffee that had already gone cold. And just when I thought the pain had decided to stay forever, I opened the bottom drawer of the sideboard, looking for my tithe notebook, and found something I had forgotten I'd even kept. A pale envelope, Naomi's handwriting from when she was 15. The edges were yellowed, but my name still shone clearly. For Mom, when I become a woman. I thought I'd seen everything, until I opened that drawer. The envelope had been sleeping among old electric bills and church flyers. The paper smelled of a forgotten drawer, but when I opened it, a sweet perfume escaped, the same baby powder Naomi used when I still rocked her in my arms. The words trembled in her teenage handwriting. Dear Mommy, one day I'll grow up and take care of you the way you take care of me. I promise I'll never leave you alone. I read it over and over until the letters blurred. A tear fell right on top of the word never, washing away the part that hurt most. Funny how time turns promises into ghosts. The smell of burnt coffee pulled me back to the kitchen. I picked up the pot, and for a moment, I saw myself many years ago at that same table, stitching tiny dreams for a little girl who believed the world began and ended in my arms. Back then, I worked cleaning offices downtown. I'd wake at 4:30, walk to the bus stop before sunrise, and come home at night with hands smelling of disinfectant and faith. Naomi went to the public school on the corner, and I made sure to wait for her at the gate, even when my knees screamed from exhaustion. Every Friday, we'd buy a slice of sweet potato pie at the market on Main Street. That was our luxury. One day, "Mama," she'd say, mouth full of sugar, "I'll take you out for pie, someplace fancy, with cloth napkins." And I believed her, because when a mother loves, she believes in the impossible. The old radio crackled on the shelf. I turned the dial, and as if time obeyed memory, it started playing the same song I used to hear while sewing her Sunday dresses. The needle pierced the fabric in rhythm with my breathing. Each stitch was a "it's going to be okay." Each knot, a "Lord, don't let me fall." On the wall hung a little framed piece I embroidered myself at my first job. "To serve is also to win." The most vivid memory came from a rainy night when Naomi was 8. Her fever climbed like a tide, and I ran between the stove and her bed, warming towels and praying under my breath. "Stay with me, Mama," she whispered. "I always stay, my love." And I did, even when I couldn't, even when my body begged for rest, even when I had to cry quietly in the bathroom so she wouldn't see. I spent 32 years sewing dresses I never wore. I made wedding gowns for people who forgot my name, mended suits for men who talked too loud and paid too little. But what hurt wasn't the poverty. It was the silence of those who pretended I didn't exist. Even so, every time I delivered an order, I smiled and said, "God bless you," because blessings are seeds that sprout even in hard soil. Naomi grew up among spools of thread and Sunday hymns. When she earned her scholarship, I cried so hard the neighbor thought something terrible had happened. But it was joy, the kind that burns because it comes wrapped in loneliness. I remember her suitcase open on the bed, the smell of new clothes, and the patchwork quilt I made from pieces of our old dresses. "For you to remember where you came from?" I said. She hugged me and replied, "I'll never forget, Mama." But the city teaches fast. What we think is memory turns into longing before we even notice. Now, as I run my hand over that old crib fabric, the one I'd been sewing, I realize every stitch was also a prayer. Faith mends what bitterness tries to tear. Maybe that's why God keeps me standing even when the floor feels like it's avoiding me. I look around the house and see small altars of my story. Elijah's worn chair, my husband, gone 20 years now, the taped-up radio, the Bible with folded edges. Everything speaks to me from a time when motherhood was a full verb, not a footnote on a photograph. And it's strange to see that even after giving everything, I can still feel invisible. But the Spirit has a curious way of speaking. That night, while washing dishes, the water reflected my face. And for the first time, I didn't just see a wounded mother. I saw a tired woman, yes, but alive. A woman who had survived everything, even the silence of her own child. And I whispered, "Have you ever given everything to someone who didn't know how to value it?" The question hung there, mixing with steam and soap. And as the windows fogged, I felt something move inside me. A quiet courage, real and small, like the first step after a fall. Because before God teaches you to forgive, He teaches you to remember. And memory, when filtered through faith, doesn't hurt, it frees. I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, and the reflection in the glass showed me a face I almost didn't recognize. Someone beginning to see her own worth. Naomi didn't know it yet, but her forgetting had awakened in me the seed of a new woman. And as I turned off the lights, an old phrase from my mother echoed somewhere in my memory. "Daughter, when you give everything and forget yourself, you teach others to forget you too. That night, I promised myself I'd never again teach anyone how to erase me. It all started slowly, like when someone changes their tone of voice before changing their words. The distance between us wasn't born from shouting. It was born from, "I'll tell you later." And when later becomes routine, love starts walking alone. Naomi began visiting less. At first, she said her new job demanded long hours. Then, that traffic in Savannah was unbearable. But deep down, I knew. What really kept her away wasn't the traffic on the streets, but the traffic of differences. Differences in voices, in manners, in smells. I was the ground, and she was starting to look at the sky as if the ground embarrassed her. I remember the first dinner with Andre's family, Naomi's husband. She insisted I wear the blue dress she had bought for me. "It's simple, Mama, but elegant." I smiled, not realizing that simple was just a polite word for "don't embarrass me." I put on lipstick, tied my headscarf, and went. When I arrived, the table looked like something out of a magazine. Folded napkins, crystal glasses, food served in color order. And her mother-in-law's eyes, those measuring, not admiring eyes, cut right through me like a cold needle. "So, you're a seamstress?" the woman asked, fingering her pearl necklace. "Yes, ma'am." That's how I raised Naomi. She nodded with a tight smile, the kind that closes a conversation rather than opens it. Naomi, nervous, jumped in quickly. "My mom makes beautiful dresses. She's even sewn for some well-known families." But no one asked the names of any of them. Silence did the rest. On the way home, Naomi drove without saying a word. I tried to soften the air. "I liked Andre's mother. She seems like a strong woman." She replied only, "Yeah, Mama, they're different. It's another world." Another world. And there it was, the first crack spoken out loud. The phrase sounded like a wall being built between us. In the days that followed, I noticed she talked less and less about her life. When I asked about work, she said, "Everything's great." When I asked about the pregnancy, which I already suspected but she denied, her eyes drifted away. Even her mama changed tone. Shorter, rushed, almost like an email. One afternoon, my neighbor Mrs. Etta stopped by, bringing a lemon pie and a piece of news she didn't know would cut. "Girl, I saw your daughter on TV. At some charity event. She looked gorgeous, with that big belly." My heart skipped. Belly? Well, yes, must be at least 7 months, no? I smiled with what strength I had left. Oh, must have been someone who looks like her. But my hands trembled holding the cup. I knew. God speaks first through pain, and then he confirms. The next Sunday, I went to church. During the sermon, the pastor said something that struck deep. Sometimes God allows people to forget you, so you'll remember you exist for him, not for them. I wrote it in the bulletin and tucked it into my purse, like holding a map through a desert. That night, Naomi called, "Hey, Mama, how are you?" "I'm fine, and you?" Silence. "Everything's fine." Her voice sounded tired, distant. "Are you pregnant, honey?" On the other end, short breathing. "Mama, please, don't start. When the time's right, you'll know." The time's right. But a mother's clock doesn't follow that schedule. It ticks by the heart, and mine had already gone off early. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened the Bible looking for comfort and landed on Proverbs 31:25. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. I closed my eyes and wept quietly. Dignity. That was the word I needed to learn how to sew inside myself. A few days later, Naomi showed up unannounced. She carried flowers in one hand and discomfort in her eyes. "You've been seeing a lot on the internet, haven't you, Mama?" I saw what God allowed me to see. She laughed, nervous. "Mama, the world's changed. Not everything has to be like before. People share things differently now. But love, Love is still shared out loud, isn't it, child? She looked away. You don't understand. Everything's just busy. Busy enough to forget the one who waited your whole life? The question came out without anger, only truth. She sighed, placed the flowers on the table, and said, I've got to go. And she did. I stood there, staring at the bouquet, pretty but scentless, flowers that looked like they were made of plastic. And for the first time, I realized my daughter wasn't lying. The world had changed. Not the whole world, just hers. And I didn't have a ticket back. Family doesn't put a pen in the hand of the one they love. My mother used to say that whenever someone tried to make me sign something I didn't want to. Now I understand. Family doesn't force, doesn't hide, doesn't humiliate. Family shares bread and silence. And if it no longer does, it's because it's become an audience, not a bond. That night, the sky felt heavier. I heard the wind tap the window like a warning. The curtain moved, and for a moment, I thought I heard a soft cry, or maybe just a memory. I grabbed the rosary I keep on the nightstand and closed my eyes. Lord, give me discernment, not to judge, but to understand. And as the wind quieted, my heart answered in the way only He knows how. The truth arrives when love has grown tired of waiting. I thought the worst part was the absence, but worse was still to come. The next week, the sound that came through my window wasn't wind, it was revelation. The morning was born gray, yet the house felt louder than ever. Every piece of furniture whispered a memory. Every wall echoed old conversations. The wooden floor creaked differently, as if it wanted to tell me what I kept pretending not to know. There are houses that learn the tone of your soul, and mine already knew. I was broken in silence. That day, I decided to clean the cabinets. We pretend we're just dusting, but deep down, we're checking if the past still answers. When I opened the first drawer, the smell of baby powder and satin ribbon brought back a soft kind of pain, the kind that doesn't scream, only settles in. There were needles, scraps of fabric, the embroidery I'd started but never finished, the name Aurora, half done, half forgotten. I sat on the floor, the cloth in my lap, staring at the stitches. The thread unraveled slowly, like the time I lost waiting for a phone call that never came. Suddenly, the light from the window flickered. A single beam broke through the curtain and landed right on that embroidered name, Aurora. I can't explain it, but the air changed. The silence grew lighter, almost full, and a gentle presence wrapped around me, like the Spirit used to do on my darkest days. Lord, if I still have worth, show me how to endure, I whispered. And then I heard, not with my ears, but with that part of the soul that recognizes signs, a soft voice saying, Daughter, the love you gave was not lost. It only changed address. The tears came slowly. They weren't tears of despair, but of understanding. Maybe motherhood doesn't end when the bond is broken. Maybe it renews itself when the heart learns to love without being invited. I picked up my phone, and the screen lit up on its own, showing a notification. Naomi has posted a new photo. My body froze before my mind could process it. I tapped the screen. There she was, holding a baby wrapped in a white blanket, the same fabric I'd chosen months ago to sew with my own hands. In the corner, the caption read, Aurora, 3 days old. The air left my lungs. It felt like someone had erased the word mother and rewritten me as spectator. That night, the entire house seemed to cry with me. The clock fell behind on its own, the lights flickered, and even the old radio, always silent unless touched, turned on by itself. The announcer's voice said, This song is dedicated to the mothers who raised their children alone. I stopped in the middle of the living room. That wasn't coincidence. It was a message. I grabbed my rosary and began to pray, each bead pulsing through my fingers like a rhythm of survival. And as the Hail Marys rose, something inside me settled. Then I heard a noise from the sewing room, a faint crack. I went to look. Naomi's childhood photo frame, the one from when she was 8, had fallen off the nail. The glass hadn't broken, but the frame had landed face down, as if the past didn't want to be looked at either. When I picked it up, I found a folded sheet of paper behind it, an old list of Naomi's college expenses, written by hand. Each line was a reminder of how much I had given without ever asking back. And at the bottom, in my own handwriting, a verse I'd written years ago. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands, the foolish one tears hers down. Proverbs 14:1. I closed my eyes. It wasn't about her. It was about me. About how I'd built an entire home around the love of someone who'd learned to live elsewhere. And still, God was whispering, "Keep building." In the middle of the night, I woke to the sound of rain. Water was dripping through the ceiling, right above the kitchen table, each drop falling like an old clock. Drip, drip, drip. Each one seemed to say, "Wake up, Lydia." I got up, placed a bowl under the leak, and sat down. The streetlight outside cast the shadow of the crucifix across the wall. For a moment, I could almost see Elijah's face, my husband, smiling the way he did whenever he saw me praying. There was no fear in that vision, only comfort. It was there, with the rain as my witness, that I realized something. Pain wasn't punishment. It was a call to leave the place of forgetting, a call to remember that life still existed after loss. By morning, the house breathed differently. I made coffee again, but this time, the smell didn't wound me, it strengthened me. While sipping the first cup, I heard a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Etta again, a newspaper in her hand. "Lydia, look who made it into the society pages." I smiled before even looking. I don't want to know, but she opened it anyway and showed me the photo. Naomi, Andre, and the baby, all smiling, with the caption, "The Cole family celebrates the birth of their heir." Heir, a heavy word. It didn't hurt because of the wealth. It hurt because of the exclusion, as if even the last name had left me behind. Mrs. Etta sighed. "Child, God sees everything. His justice is gentle, but it's sure." I nodded and answered in a thread of voice. "If God has ever warned you in silence, write it down," I heard. When she left, I sat back at the table, and the house began to speak again, this time with a steady voice. The gaps in the window hissed with the wind, forming words almost human. "Don't strike back, rebuild." It was as if the spirit was using the voice of my own home to teach me that dignity isn't noise, it's structure, and that before I could lift my head, I had to rebuild the foundation of my heart. I picked up the blue notebook and wrote a new page. When love cuts you out of the picture, God places you in His. And just below, my dignity is not negotiable. As I wrote, I noticed the sun rising, painting gold across the kitchen floor. It was the first real light to enter that house in days. I felt its warmth on my face and understood. The house wasn't crying anymore. It was breathing with me. And deep inside that sunrise, a certainty formed. The next time the doorbell rang, it wouldn't bring news. It would bring a test, and I would be ready. A night came heavy, the air thicker than the curtains. I was making chamomile tea when the bell rang 3 times, quick, impatient, like someone who doesn't expect to wait. My chest tightened. I took a deep breath before opening. Outside stood Naomi. Beside her, Andre. Behind them drifted a strong scent of lavender. And then her mother-in-law, Marjorie Cole, wearing a thin smile that never reached her eyes. "Mom," Naomi said, barely looking at me, "we need to talk. It's a good thing. It's about organization." That word entered like a knife wrapped in sugar. Organization. "Come in," I said. In the living room, The clock insisted on a short, sharp tick-tock, and I could hear my own breathing getting louder, as if trying to guard my heart above the noise. Marjorie placed a folder neatly on the table, lining up its corners perfectly. "Lydia, we all want what's best for Aurora," she began, reading as if from a script. "We know you love her, but family is also management. These days, everything needs to be on paper to avoid misunderstandings." Avoid misunderstandings. The phrase hit my chest like a door that wouldn't shut. "What is this?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Andre cleared his throat. "It's a family agreement. Simple stuff. Visiting hours, no photo rules, boundaries about interference, that kind of thing, and a tiny little power of attorney, just to handle some paperwork for the baby things you, donated. For everyone's good." Naomi tried to smile, but her eyes wouldn't stay still. Marjorie stepped forward. "No one's taking anything from you, Lydia. On the contrary, we want to include you properly. We just need a promise that there won't be excesses." She slid a pen drive and a notepad across the table. I saw her perfect nails, her gold pen, and for a second, I heard my mother's voice. "Daughter, when they ask you to sign something just so you can see the ones you love, read the fine print." I opened the folder. The text began in large, friendly letters: harmonious coexistence, mutual respect, child's routine. But I'd learned to read stitches from the inside out. I went straight to the small print. And there were the knots. The signatory acknowledges she made no financial contribution to the family event, birth, and therefore cannot claim participation in decisions. Irrevocably authorizes the transfer of nursery items and objects of sentimental value to the child, with no right of retrieval. Agrees to surrender the late Elijah's ring, a family heirloom, to Aurora as a symbol of continuity. Grants power of attorney to Mrs. Marjorie Cole to perform necessary acts regarding future donations, including the sale of movable and immovable property. I drew in a long breath, letting the air scrape my ribs. The letters grew smaller, almost sneaky, when I reached the last line. As moral assurance of the obligation not to interfere, the signatory may offer her residential property as collateral, an optional clause to be signed in an addendum. My lungs made a sound. Moral assurance. Property. I tasted metal in my mouth, scissors iron. I looked at Naomi, and her face quivered slightly. "Daughter, did you read this?" "Mama, it's standard," she said quickly, as if hoping her speed could distract me. "We just want to avoid conflict. You'll still see Aurora. It's just to make things official." Marjorie placed the pen on the papers, her voice coated in rehearsed gentleness. "It's the adult way, Lydia. You want peace, don't you? Peace is built this way." The clock seemed stuck on the same second for centuries. I heard my breath, in, out, and counted to 7. Then I reached for my phone, set it on the table, and said, "Would you excuse me for a minute? I'll get my glasses." I walked to the bedroom, not for glasses, but for my blue notebook. Back at the table, I sat down, opened it to the page I'd written that morning, and turned it slowly so they could read. "My dignity is not negotiable." Silence turned to stone. "Lydia," Marjorie said, forcing a smile, "don't dramatize. This is just a way to formalize affection." "Affection doesn't need an addendum," I replied, calm. "And control disguised as care still strangles the same way." Andre folded his arms, jaw tight. "You're being unfair. We're trying to include you after everything." "After everything what, son? After I found out about my granddaughter on Facebook?" No one answered. The clock ticked again. I breathed once more, lifted my phone, and snapped pictures of every page of that agreement. Marjorie reached out her hand. "That's not permitted." "What's not permitted, Mrs. Cole? To read? To keep proof?" I smiled faintly. "Proof is respect for the future. I learned that long ago." Naomi brought a hand to her mouth. "Mama, please, just sign it. It's for Aurora's good." I looked at my daughter and saw the 8-year-old girl asking me to stay by her bedside when she had a fever. Love wanted to say yes. Dignity held my hand still. I pointed at the line about the house. "This part right here, it's a scam wearing a suit. Not today. Not with my name. Not with the house Elijah built with me, without taking a cent from anyone." Marjorie sighed, took the pen off the table, and her perfume turned to smoke in my throat. "So, you'd rather have conflict?" "I'd rather have truth," I answered. "And truth doesn't need a signature to breathe." Andre stood up. "Let's go, Naomi." He grabbed the folder, but Marjorie didn't move. She gathered the papers slowly, staring at me like someone packing away a photograph she doesn't plan to look at again. "You know, Lydia," she said, smooth as ice, "some mothers know their place. Others invent one." Her smile was polite as a blade. "Think about it." The door shut, and the sound of the latch was louder than the whole conversation. My breathing grew large again, enough to fill the house. I felt my heart beating in peace, the kind of peace that arrives sweaty but still arrives. The kitchen looked different. The clock now ticked with me. Tick. Rest. Talk. I was still trembling, not from fear, but from birth. I sat down, opened my notebook, and wrote, "Never again sign what makes me smaller. Never again let love turn into control. Never again mistake access for affection." The doorbell rang again. I thought, they're back. But it was Sister Ruth from the choir, holding a bag of bread and eyes bright with purpose. "God sent me here," she said, skipping any formalities. "I couldn't sleep, and your name kept coming to me." She set the bread on the table, looked around, and understood without a word. "They came asking for your signature, didn't they?" I nodded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn business card. "Dr. Alana Pierce, lawyer from the church, daughter of a seamstress, knows every trick behind these so-called family agreements. I called her on the way here. She's expecting you tomorrow morning." Before I could speak, she added, "Take your notebook and take this bread. Faith is also eating and planning." I cried then, but it was a clear cry, the kind that comes when you finally see the shore after the storm. Sister Ruth held my hand the way someone steadies a boat. "Repeat after me, Lydia. My dignity is not negotiable." "My dignity is not negotiable," I said, feeling the words turn into muscle. She smiled and pointed to the picture of little Naomi I'd straightened earlier. "God saw every stitch you ever sewed, and today, He sewed you back together." When she left, the house felt lighter. I opened the windows. The wind carried the scent of distant rain, and my breathing finally fit inside my chest again. On my way to the bedroom, my phone buzzed, a message from Naomi. "Sorry about earlier. We're just trying to make things easier. Think about it, please. I'll stop by tomorrow so you can sign. It'll be simpler for everyone." I looked at the screen, then at the notebook, then at the sky. I typed back, "Tomorrow, I have a meeting too, with the one who protects gentle women and teaches them how to defend themselves in peace." I turned off the light. In the darkness, I heard my own chest like the tide at night, in, out, and between one silence and the next, an entire certainty formed inside me. I will never again be the signature that erases me. Climactic anchor line, my dignity is not negotiable. Bridge to the next scene. At 9 a.m. in Dr. Alana Pierce's office, the paper would change sides, from my skin to my protection. The clock read 8:42 when I arrived at Dr. Alana Pierce's office. The building was modest, but the sign on the door was solid. Law and Restorative Justice, Defending Family Dignity. The words felt like they'd been written by someone who understood the weight a tired heart can carry. The receptionist offered me coffee. I declined. I'd already had courage, and it was stronger than caffeine. When I entered, Dr. Alana stood beside an open window, a woman in her 40s, honey-toned skin, eyes that had clearly fought for women like me. "Sister Ruth told me a bit," she said, smiling without pity, "but I'd rather hear it from you. Please, sit down, Mrs. Lydia." And I told her, every silence, every disguised sentence, every paper they'd tried to make me sign. While I spoke, she didn't interrupt. She just took notes and nodded, like someone stitching justice one thread at a time. When I finished, she closed her notebook and drew a deep breath. "Do you know, Mrs. Lydia, that what they tried to do is a crime dressed as affection?" I froze. "A crime?" She nodded. "Emotional coercion for financial gain. They tried to pressure you into transferring property out of guilt. Happens more often than people think." She paused. "And you know what I admire most about you?" "What's that?" "You didn't yell, didn't tear it up, didn't lose control. You simply said no. God especially protects those who say no at the right time." Her words felt like a hug made of light. "So what do I do now, Doctor?" "Now," she said, smiling, "we reorganize the field. Faith is also strategy." She drew a straight line on a sheet of paper. "Here's the before, the time you were trying to be included." Then she marked an X. "And here's now, the time to protect yourself." She wrote down 3 steps and explained each one. 1. Register. Keep everything you have: messages, papers, notifications. Save them, photograph them, print them, write down dates. 2. Shield. We'll move your house into a legal protection trust in your name, so no one can use it without your consent. 3. Define. We'll create your own visitation plan, a document that guarantees your right to see Aurora. No humiliation, no scheduled permission, no needing approval to love. As she spoke, my breathing, tight and shallow for days, started to follow hers. It sounded almost like music. "And Naomi?" I asked. "What happens to her?" "She stays where she should have been all along," said the lawyer, "in the space called respect. If she wants to reconnect, she'll have to walk through the gate of truth. And if she doesn't, you keep walking the road of peace." She looked straight into my eyes, because God didn't teach you to depend on conditional affection. He taught you to be a pillar, and pillars hold up, they don't beg. My heart opened like a window after rain. Dr. Alana handed me a folder with a blue cover. "Here are the first steps," she said, "and here, a new power of attorney. But this time, you're signing to protect yourself, not to erase yourself." I took the pen firmly. I signed. For the first time in a long time, my name wasn't a concession. It was a command. Before I left, she touched my arm. "Mrs. Lydia, can I give you some advice that's not in the law?" I nodded. "Pray for her repentance, but don't go back out of habit. Forgiveness is free, but dignity has a fixed address." The tears came again, not from pain, but from release. As she walked me to the door, she added, "If fear visits you tonight, repeat what you wrote in your notebook. Out loud. Fear respects the ones who hear themselves." Outside, the Savannah sun reflected on the windows. The air felt new. I bought 2 flowers on the way home, one for me, one for the church. When I got back, I placed them in a plain glass at the center of the table, a seal of new beginnings. That afternoon, Naomi called. "Mom, I've been thinking. Can we talk?" Her voice was lower, maybe tired. "We can, honey, but no papers on the table this time." Silence. I just want you to see Aurora." I smiled softly. "And I want you to see me, Naomi, as a woman, not just as a mother." After we hung up, the wind blew through the window, light as a blessing. The curtain's rustle sounded like calm breathing, I took my notebook and wrote, "Share this with someone who needs to remember. Faith is also strategy. Love isn't blindness. It's the kind of light that protects." That night, I slept without restlessness. The dream was simple. I held my granddaughter in my arms, and behind me stood a solid wall, uncracked. Above it, a phrase shone like fresh embroidery. "Whoever shelters in God cannot be used as a stepping stone." The morning came gentle, like a finished stitch. It was Sunday, and the sunlight entered the kitchen with a respectful glow. The phone rang at 9 sharp. On the other end was Naomi's voice, trembling, stripped of its polish. "Mama, I'm downstairs. Can I come up?" I took a few seconds before answering, not from anger, but to breathe. "Yes, child." The door's open. As she climbed the stairs, the sound of her heels mixed with the rhythm of my heart, and for the first time, it wasn't fear keeping time. It was certainty. The certainty of someone whose house and conscience are both standing firm. When she came in, I saw something different. Her face was tired, hair tied in haste, her eyes lost somewhere between guilt and longing. She sat at the table without asking, like someone returning to a place she's not sure still belongs to her. "Mama, I didn't come to argue. I came to explain." That word, explain, landed heavy. Explaining is the verb of those who try to patch a torn fabric, but I let her speak. "I was wrong, I know. It's just, I was afraid." "Afraid of what, Naomi?" "Of disappointing you, of mixing things up. Andre, his mother," she breathed out. "They thought you wouldn't understand this new life of ours, that you'd feel out of place. So you decided to protect me from what? From being a mother." She lowered her head. The silence that followed had the same weight as those nights when she'd come home late and I'd pretend to be asleep. The same silence where love tries to scream, but can't find a voice anymore. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "Hurt isn't the verb, Naomi. Exclude is. Pain you accept. Exclusion you learn from." She wiped away a tear. "I thought you didn't need to know everything. A mother always knows, Naomi, even when the whole world says she doesn't." The clock read 9:45. At that same time, a week ago, I had signed my freedom at Dr. Alana's desk. Today, I would sign something else. The end of guilt. I pulled the blue notebook toward me and placed it between us. The marks of my hands on the cover already looked like a tattoo. I opened to the page where I'd written, "Proof is respect for the future." "See this, Naomi?" She nodded, unsure. "This is what's left between us. Proof, not of crime, but of choice. Proof that love endures, but also gets tired. Proof that the woman who raised you has learned to respect herself." She noticed the card tucked on the next page. "Who's this?" "Someone who helped me put my boundaries into writing." "You talked to a lawyer?" "I talked to God. He introduced me to one." Naomi began to cry. The kind of cry that doesn't know whether it's shame or repentance. "Mama, I wish things were different." "They still can be, Naomi. But for that, you'll have to see me, without being afraid to really see me." She looked at me, eyes searching, confused. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. "It means I'm not just the woman who gave you life. I'm the woman who stood back up. And if one day you decide to walk with me again, it'll be side by side, never above, never below." She drew a shaky breath and reached into her purse, pulling out a small box. Inside was Elijah's ring. "I couldn't." Her voice broke. "I couldn't wear it. It still felt like yours." I took the ring and closed my hand around it. The cold metal seemed to pulse in my palm. "What belongs to dignity isn't given away, Naomi. It's shared." She stood slowly, tears running freely down her face. "Do you still love me, Mama?" I smiled. Love doesn't end, child. It just changes clothes. Mine now wears respect. We stayed silent for several long seconds. In that moment, there was no shouting, no justification, just two women learning both the weight and the lightness of forgiveness. The phone buzzed on the table, a message from Dr. Alana. Final contract filed, house protected. So proud of you, Lydia. The Lord fights for those who remain in peace. I showed the phone to Naomi. See, honey, I didn't have to fight. I just had to listen to myself. She nodded, wiping her face. And me, what do I do now? Learn to listen too. A mother's silence says more than 1,000 sermons. I embraced her. But this time, it wasn't the hug of someone begging to be remembered. It was the hug of someone who had learned to be both memory and presence at once. Outside, the wind slipped through the window, light, like an answer. And when Naomi left, I realized I wasn't carrying resentment, only peace. The peace of someone who had done her part. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Today I learned that forgiveness isn't a return, it's a border, and that some reconciliations only happen when love learns self-respect." Afternoon light spilled through the window, landing on the page and highlighting the final line I wrote. Proof is respect for the future. In that instant, I felt something new inside. Not the pain of the past, but a clean space where tomorrow could grow. I picked up my rosary, looked toward the sky, and whispered, "Lord, thank you for teaching me to love without losing myself." And from somewhere within the house, the echo answered, "Never alone." 6 months have passed since that Sunday. Sometimes I still wake up startled, expecting the doorbell or the cry of a baby that isn't here. But then Savannah's sunlight filters through the window, and the warmth on my face reminds me. I survived. And surviving now isn't just existing, it's serving with purpose. Every Wednesday, I open my home to a small circle of neighborhood women. We call it the Circle of Light. It's nothing fancy, just a wooden table, mismatched cups, warm cornbread, and a Bible in the center. But something sacred happens there, something even grand churches sometimes forget. Listening. Each woman brings her story: abandonment, manipulation, grief, the loss of children, cruel silences, and I listen, the way one sews, stitch by stitch, carefully. Because I've learned that healing is a gentle needle. It stings at first, but then it closes the wound. On the wall, I hung my blue notebook inside a simple frame. Its yellowed pages are my legacy. My dignity is not negotiable. Proof is respect for the future. And at the end, written in large, steady letters, "Never alone." When our meetings end, we always sing an old hymn my mother taught me. He gives power to the faint, and to those who have no might, he increases strength. Each voice seems to lend breath back to another, and as the sound echoes through the house, I can feel the floor tremble, as if the spirit whispers, now she understands what home truly is. Naomi calls sometimes. Her voice is careful, like someone walking on new ground. But now, the silence between us no longer hurts. It's just space. Space where respect fits. Last month, she came with little Aurora. The three of us sat on the porch, eating sweet bread and laughing at small things. Aurora held my finger and wouldn't let go. I looked up at the sky and thought, real love always finds a way back, even if it takes another generation. After they left, I sat alone and realized I didn't feel empty. I felt whole, not because everything was fixed, but because I was. The Spirit made me understand that dignity isn't a reaction, it's a state, and that faith which only waits for miracles is still childish faith. The faith that moves the world is the one that organizes the heart. One evening, during a Circle of Light meeting, a young woman asked, "Miss Lydia, did you forgive your daughter?" I smiled. I did. But forgiveness wasn't a gift for her. It was freedom for me. God didn't ask me to forget. He asked me not to lose myself, and I obeyed. The women cried, laughed, embraced. That night, I realized that the story which once wounded me had become a tool for healing. The pains that silenced me had turned into a language, and others had begun to speak it. That's why I tell everyone who comes here. Suffering isn't the end. It's the seed of the ministry you haven't discovered yet. Now, at the start of each month, I bring a cornmeal cake to church and leave it on the altar with a small note. For every mother who was left out of the picture, but never out of God's plan. Every time I place that note, a sweet lightness fills me, like someone finally laying their burden in the right place. Sometimes I think of Elijah. I believe he'd be proud to see the woman who learned to stand tall without hardening her heart. And when the afternoon breeze passes and the curtains sway, I know he's still here. True love doesn't die, it just moves to another room. And when people ask what I've learned, I answer, I've learned that forgiveness is a door and boundaries are the lock, that faith walks hand in hand with common sense, and that a woman who discovers her own worth never again fits inside a small frame. In the corner of the living room, the crib I once sewed remains empty, but not sad. It now holds blankets and toys from the circle of light. Inside, it rests the new stories we're helping to bring into the world, and every stitch of that cream fabric reminds me, motherhood never ends. It simply expands. I close my eyes, take a deep breath, and let the air fill my chest. There is no more fear, no more urgency, no more guilt, only peace, a peace not born from forgetting, but from beginning again. The clock in the living room chimes 3 times, just like that night when the Spirit's voice woke me. But this time, the sound isn't a warning. It's a confirmation. I rise, open the window, and let the wind come in. Outside, the honey-colored sky announces evening. And in the reflection on the glass, I no longer see a woman alone. I see a woman whole. I smile and say aloud, Lord, thank you for turning the silence that once hurt me into the voice that now guides me. On the porch, the sun brushes against the plants. And when it touches the blue notebook hanging on the wall, the words begin to glow, as if heaven itself had written them. Never alone. If this story touched your heart, write never alone in the comments. This is your refuge, where pain becomes legacy and faith turns into strength. Subscribe and share this with a woman who needs to remember dignity is sacred